Recording. Hello and welcome to Body Talk. This time we're going to talk about mental health, and I have Trisha Gibson here to help me out or sort through the whole mental health spectrum. So stay tuned. Glad you could stay with us. So today we're going to talk about mental health and maybe how the mental side can also impact the bodily side or the physical part. You know, what goes on in your head also affects everything else. So today I've got Trisha with us, Gibson from
Yes.
Hopewell, and you see more, or you do see just the mental health part of it.
Right.
So
Correct.
What things do you specialize in?
So I'm a licensed professional counselor and licensed independent chemical dependency counselor. So I specialize in mental health and addiction disorders. Those are. I also work primarily in the criminal justice system. So I kind of specialize with criminal offenders that have mental health and substance use disorders.
All right. So what do people see you mostly for? It says drugs. Or what?
Drugs, I do a lot of work with trauma, post-traumatic stress disorder in the jails. I do see some bipolar disorder, which when you say bipolar, I think society has a lot of myths associated with that. It's depression and then fluctuations where you're the opposite of depressed.
Mm-hmm.
You have a lot more energy. So it's characterized mainly by mood fluctuations.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have the occasional, they're not easier cases, but it's a little bit less stressful as far as recovery is concerned with depression and anxiety. Like I said, it's not easier, and going through depression and anxiety is not easy, but from a treatment perspective, it's not quite as difficult as treating like a complex trauma.
So what are some of these inborn, or are most mental health things as a result of experience and learned behaviors?
That's a good question. I think in the
Nature, nurture.
the psychology world, there's still very much that debate on is it nature nurture.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of research that says there's biological components to mental health disorders.
Chemical stuff going on in the brain, or?
It can be chemical imbalances in the brain. It can be genetics as well,
Mm-hmm.
things you inherit from your ancestors, your parents. But also there's this social learning factor too, of how you were brought up and how you experience things in the world and how you interact with others and things like that. It's combined
Mm-hmm.
from my experience.
Okay. And the drug thing too would be a little bit of both.
Yeah.
Self-medication for coping with experiences or addictive personalities?
I have, in my experience, learned there's pretty much 3 different ways someone kind of falls into the trap of addiction. They self-medicate due to psychological pain,
Mm-hmm.
depression, anxiety, trauma. There's a genetic component too, especially with things like alcoholism.
Mm-hmm.
My dad drank. So I drink. You know, you see it more prevalent in people that it runs in their family. And then the third way is someone's been in an accident, a physical injury or something.
Mm-hmm.
They were prescribed opiates and it starts that way. Those are the 3 main kind of categories I've seen in my practice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know I've been getting a little bit more anxiety, I don't want to say ridden or whatever, but just from, the past several years of difficult situations, and one was just an MRI,
Yeah.
which I just kind of freaked out in. Well, I mean, it didn't go crazy, but I knew I had to do it, and they shoved me in the tube, and I have never been claustrophobic, but I just had to get out of there. And then they put me in an open MRI, which is like,
Not much better.
it's open on the sides,
Yeah.
but you still got this like, looks like 10-ton object like 5 inches from your face, and you can't sit up, or you just gotta lay there.
Yes.
And then after that, I couldn't even lay down in a dentist chair. Thought, can you set me up a little bit, because I'm getting freaked out. So it was a little PTSD, I think. And so I'm getting a little better since then.
Yeah.
The distance, I think, between there, and maybe it's a little bit of Riesling, like, I ain't gonna die, I'm all right.
Right. And being in an MRI or CT scanner and having anxiety is not uncommon. You're in a tight, closed space. You feel out of control, like you can't get out if you needed to.
Right.
Although you feel that way.
Well, that was my thing, is like, I can't sit up, and
You can't move around freely. You feel restricted.
Right, and then you have to like rely on the person on the outside to,
Yes.
I was hitting the buzzer like 10 times and nobody was answering.
Yeah.
Like, oh no, have they
So
gone to lunch?
It's that loss of control and feeling like you have to put your trust for your well-being in someone else's hands. So that
Right.
causes anxiety. But also the basic fact you're in an MRI or CT scanner for a reason. There's a medical reason that they're trying to do diagnostic imaging for.
Right, it was my
So
arm.
then there's that worry, is am I okay?
So that was just my little thing. And then there's people that have gotten, that's minor stuff compared to what other people have put up with abuse and
True.
trauma from accidents and other things.
Yeah. In my experience too, I talk to clients a lot of times in crisis every day in my work, and I supervise staff that deal with clients in crisis as well, and that's really difficult. So
And when you say crisis, what does that mean?
someone that is having thoughts of suicide, are having thoughts of wanting to hurt somebody else, or that they've completely lost touch with reality and they've had a psychotic break. Those are the type of crisis.
And you're just like crying and just lost control of your emotions?
When someone's suicidal,
No, the last.
when they're psychotic, they're just talking things that don't make sense. They're seeing and hearing things that aren't there. That's what psychosis looks like.
Okay.
There's different types of psychosis. There's hallucinations, you can hear and see things. And then there's delusions, which is
Everybody's out to get me, or
it can be that it
there's
can
a
be
thing under my bed.
yes. I mean, yeah, it's
There's
just
monsters all around.
it's a
or-
really distorted way of thinking, is delusions.
And when I say monster under the bed, it could be whatever is in your environment that's going to get you.
Yes. And, I've worked with some in the jails that have religious type delusions. There's different types of delusions. So they feel like they're Jesus or God sent them here on a mission. And some things do align with like Christian beliefs, but it's much more to the extreme. So,
And then do they look at the Bible like this supports my
yes.
my whole idea?
They find things to support their ideas.
Right. Which, that's the whole thing of the internet and the news. You look for things. You don't look for things that challenge your beliefs.
Right.
You look for things that acknowledge it.
Because that creates within us a sense of resistance when things don't agree with us, and it forces us to have to change something. It's not comfortable.
I don't know if we should go there, but you see as well as anybody else how much division is in our society. What can we do? My thing is just let's talk reasonably with respect to each other and find our common ground and work from there.
It's difficult sometimes. You're dealing with people's fundamental schema. So schema is how you view the world.
Yeah, your belief systems.
Yes. It's like generational belief systems. It's very fundamental to what makes up each of us. And some of these things that we're seeing conflicts on are types of those things. It would be great if we could all sit down and have conversations and be open. But I think that we're, as a society, this is my opinion, unprofessional opinion,
Sure.
that we're trying to change each other. And I'm not sure that's going to work.
You can see that on people's Facebook posts. Has anybody's minds been changed? No, we retreat further back into our caves.
Yes, and you lose friends that way.
Yeah.
You get deleted that way.
You know, but the whole thing is everybody believes the other halves are Nazis, which is devaluing
Perhaps.
we're giving Nazis a bad name at this point.
And I think that's part of a problem is we're not validating each other when we disagree.
Right, and like in those times, and that's the danger in some of that is dehumanizing the other person.
Absolutely.
They're
Yeah.
monsters or whatever.
Yes. Yeah. And it's so easy for people to attach their identity to labels like that. And it's really unfortunate because fundamentally we're all human beings and we all share that in common. So I think it's about finding that commonality with each other. That's the place to start.
Right, and that's true. You know, when you're looking at other countries or whatever, that whole country is not out to kill you.
Right.
They just want a nice life like you and spend time with their families and go to a nice job and live.
Absolutely.
It's all the people in power that complicate things.
It's when we stereotype and label a whole country as there's good and bad people all over the world.
Right.
It doesn't come from one religion or one country.
So with sound like one of those things, anxiety. What are methods that somebody can use to keep their mind right?
So anxiety is characterized by excessive worry. You can feel like you are losing control of yourself in more extreme situations. Even further on a continuum, you can have panic attacks. They feel like you're having a heart attack. You might start sweating, your arms or fingers or face might go numb, chest pain, rapid heartbeat.
Yeah, I feel like I could talk myself into a heart attack in like 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And I'd be on the floor.
Yeah. So it's characterized by also like irritability, difficulty concentrating, problems sleeping too. You're trying to lay in bed and your mind's racing.
Yeah.
So
That's a panic attack is what I would call it.
To me it's anxiety. A panic attack is more of it incorporates those physical symptoms as well. It feels like a heart attack, and it's scary for a lot of people.
And a lot of people, you just can't turn your mind off. So, well, just stop thinking about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just keeps going.
And to be honest, it's kind of funny you said that because that is an intervention we use. Not so much in those words, but we do a technique called thought stopping. So I teach my clients, you have to think about what you're thinking about. And you kind of step back like, that's such a simple yet hard concept. How often do we stop and think about what our thoughts are?
No, you're not saying to concentrate on what is giving us anxiety. It's controlling what you're thinking about.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to think about that anymore. I need to think about this.
Yes.
Which is when physical activity and things like that come into play, where if I would just sit on the couch and go, oh my God, I don't feel good, and then that spirals out of control. But if I took a walk and got my mind focused on something else or took a ride on the motorcycle, which is consuming,
Yeah.
then you're not thinking about that anymore.
But on a biological level, like you're releasing anti-stress hormones when you do things you enjoy like that. So those are really good coping skills, and that works for you. And there's different ones for everybody.
But you can't do that at 3 a.m.
You could ride a motorcycle. If you could do that.
So where in the heck are you going?
Right, right. So we do a technique called thought stopping, and it starts with being aware of what you're thinking about. And then I try to get my clients to journal those thoughts. It doesn't always work, but they can still hopefully remember, and we could talk about it in sessions. But it's about figuring out the pattern. How do you lead up to that?
Is there something that triggered it?
Yeah, 100% of the time there's something that triggered it. And it's about moving that unknown into conscious awareness and being aware of that. That's when you have the power to change it. And a lot of clients, when they have anxiety, depression, they feel like their thoughts control them. They can't do anything about it. So at that fundamental level, it's about just starting to be aware of your thoughts.
And then for the people that feel like that they're, at the mercy of their mind, what do you do?
So you just kind of start and you process what your thoughts are. So in cognitive behavioral therapy...
Like, why am I thinking about this?
Yes. So in cognitive behavioral therapy, the belief is you have thoughts, those thoughts lead to feelings, and those feelings leads to actions. So the way it works is if you can understand your thoughts, learn how to reframe those thoughts into more adaptive and healthy type of thought processes, you can change how you're feeling.
Okay. All right, there were 3 things you had talked about. What were they? And that was it the third one?
With?
I think there was depression, anxiety, and then there was...
Trauma.
Trauma and probably addiction.
Addiction, yes.
So if you've been through a trauma, say, like a lot of people have been in car wrecks.
Yeah.
And that just runs around, and I'm sure that there's things that are triggering, I'm going down the same road, the same area, or whatever. Is there techniques you can use for that?
Absolutely. So I've done quite a bit of postgraduate training in trauma. Cognitive behavioral therapy works well for trauma. Also, there's a technique that I've done training on called EMDR. It stands for eye movement, rapid desensitization, and reprocessing. It's a long clinical word. But basically, you do what's called bilateral stimulation. So you want to engage the left and right brain back and forth. And that really reintegrates your neural processes and how your brain really views that trauma. You still have the memories of that event, but it changes the severity of how you react to it. So that's an intervention that I use regularly.
I learned hypnosis, and I think one of the things that I saw maybe useful, and it would be, if somebody has a bad feeling about something, or they have a certain way of coping or habits, and if you took them back to a time where that triggered these things, well, then you could make sense of, well, I do this stuff because that happened to me at this other time.
Right.
And when you make sense of it, you can kind of put it in a box and go, okay,
Yeah.
I'm done with that. True or no?
I can't answer that. I have not had training in hypnosis. It's not super popular in the counseling community anymore. I'm reading a book right now.
What I do is not suggestive.
Right.
It's not like, okay, whenever you see chocolate, you're going to feel sick.
Yeah.
No, it's not that kind of a thing. It's just only just looking for things, asking questions.
Yeah.
Exploration, I guess, what I was looking at.
I'm reading a book right now on trauma. It's called The Body Keeps Score, written by a leading psychiatrist in trauma. He talks a little bit about hypnosis. It was really popular during the early 1900s, and it just kind of lost its luster. And I think science really hasn't proven its validity a whole lot. In counseling, we want to not do harm to our clients, and so we want to do things that are more evidence-based and highly researched. When it comes to EMDR, it's not so much about making the client relive that experience and tell me everything bad that happened. That can be traumatizing too. It's about, what does that event tell you about who you are? It's based off negative beliefs, and then changing that to a more positive, adaptive belief.
Is that, I got attacked in the parking lot, and so now I'm a victim of whatever, and you feed off of that victimhood?
Yeah, so it could be, I'm a victim, I'm weak.
Right.
Different things like that.
I can't defend myself or whatever.
Exactly.
And so you just reframe it, and
I did the best I could.
Right.
Yeah,
Which is that's all any of us can do in any situation.
absolutely.
And with a little bit of time left, we have the addiction part.
Yes.
So, there are, I think, people with addictive personalities and some that don't. I don't think I'm addictive, but, I really like chocolate, and if you had told me, it's like, you can't ever have chocolate again, it would be pretty depressing.
Right, right.
But if I get
it
it out of drink, I only drink one and I'm okay. I can walk away from it.
What do people do when you tell them you can't do something?
I just want more.
I think that's human nature.
Right.
I haven't studied a whole lot on the concept of addictive personalities. I've heard it quite a bit. I've said it in my pre-counselor days.
So what do you think is maybe causes and ways to overcome?
What causes addiction? Like I said at the beginning, from my experience, there's kind of 3 entryways that I've found from my clients. That's they self-medicate due to psychological pain, depression, anxiety, trauma, other mental health symptoms.
Right. I'm feeling bad. I need a drink or whatever.
Because it's a quick, easy fix, right? And it takes away or helps numb that for a while. There's biological components, so chemical imbalances, genetics, and then there's also people that's been involved in physical accidents or have physical injuries. They were legally, pro-socially by a doctor prescribed something and got addicted.
Right. So
That can happen to anybody.
Do you work through each of those things the same way or no?
Yeah, I think the process of addiction, as far as from a counseling perspective, is very similar. Although all of our treatment modalities are personalized to the specific person we're working with.
You can't just say, well, this is 12 steps.
There's
Everybody's fixed.
There's no cookie cutter approach. I wish
Right.
there was, and then we wouldn't be in the problems we are.
Right.
And we could help a lot more people. But yeah, it's very individualized.
What would you tell a family member who's dealing with a child or a brother, sister, or spouse who is addicted? What do they need to do?
You can't force them into treatment. You can't change them. You can love them, even if that means you have to from a distance. Boundaries are super important.
So you don't get abused.
Reach out and get support. You're not alone. And I think a lot of families and friends have a sense of guilt and shame and kind of attach that, like, somehow this was my fault, or I should have done this differently when he was little or she was little, or I shouldn't have said this. And I don't think that's warranted. I don't think that's fair to do to yourself.
And I see that those questions also brought up, and we've had a lot of suicides in the past 2 years. More than I've seen in a lifetime in the past year.
Yeah.
And then, the question, I understand it too, that, well, it may be if I shouldn't have said this or if I should have said that, and something I could have done to change the outcome. And not necessarily, right?
No. I think there's a lot of data out there. We know how to do suicide prevention. We know reach out to our friends. If you suspect someone's depressed, ask them, what can I do to support you? I think that alone is so therapeutic and it's often overlooked. Just having someone to reach out and care is so powerful.
Like, you will not bother me, just like we told our kids, if you're out, you're drunk, I don't care what time it is, call me and we will drive you home.
Yeah.
Do not take a chance on the road. And the same thing, you are not going to bother me if it's 2:30 in the morning and you feel like doo-doo about yourself. Call me, it will be welcomed.
Right. And so I'd say to the opposite side, the people that don't want to reach out for help because they don't want to be a bother or a burden, are you taking away another person's, ability to care about you? And is that your decision to make? You're making the decision for another person that they don't have time for you.
Yeah.
And that might not be accurate.
That's a different way to look at it.
Yeah.
Any other things in the last minute or so that you would like to add?
I think on the topic of suicide, we're seeing a lot more suicide deaths, and
And I think
especially
it's a lot to do with social media and the phones that stick with you.
yeah,
You know.
you're more tied to something like that. And there's a lot of bullying that happens online
Right.
too.
That's what I'm saying. If you were in school, when I went home, I'm away from it.
Yeah,
And this follows you everywhere you go, and it's relentless.
yeah. We're seeing a lot of suicides with younger adolescents, kids sometimes.
And you stand back, it's like they had everything going for them.
Yeah, but in the moment they didn't see that, and that's so unfortunate. And we're seeing like high-profile suicide deaths as well. We've seen that in the news in the last few weeks. I guess I just want to encourage viewers to reach out to people in their circle, be a source of support. There's a crisis text line available in Ohio. I think I didn't bring that data with me, but I think you can Google Ohio crisis text line, find that pretty easy.
Because it's different when you have to talk to somebody.
It is.
And you could text and...
Yeah, and you can talk to a certified crisis counselor 24/7 that way. It's a free service. Hopewell has a crisis line as well, 24/7. If you're in crisis, you can call and talk to someone as well. That number is 740-446-5500, and you can reach them extension 480 or press 0 when the operator comes on.
Well, it looks like we are out of time, and hopefully something we talked about will help you in some way, or somebody that you love. And thanks, Trisha, for coming on.
Thank you, Mike.
And I'm sure we'll probably talk about some other things next time. So thanks for watching Body Talk, and we'll see you next time.